Alright you guys, it's Michael here. In this video this evening we're going to be teaching my nephew Liam how to weld. He's 15 years old, and have you ever welded before, Liam?
Not at all.
Alright, you excited about learning?
Yes.
Alright, sounds good. So just recently I did a welder review on this new titanium Flux 125 welder. It's sold from Harbor Freight, and it's kind of an entry-level welder. It's a flux welder, and I thought perfect opportunity to teach someone that's never welded before. A lot of people are going to be buying these things. They work really well. It's an inverter. It's really smooth arc. But being an entry-level welder, figured we might as well go over some of the steps on setting the machine up, some of the basic tools and things you'll probably want to have around your shop if you're just getting started, how to learn how to weld. If you're a welder that's been welding for years, you might want to skip over this video. But if you're kind of new to it or want to learn some other techniques, stick around and check out the video, guys. Alright, let's get welding. So I'm not going to go into detail on how to get the spool of wire on here and all that. You guys can figure that out. But anyways, one thing I'm going to talk about is when you get your wire on here, you want this knob to be tensioned enough so that the spool has some resistance, but you don't want it to be so loose that it uncoils and just becomes a rat nest in here, and you don't want it so tight that the machine's fighting to pull the wire out. So just pick with your tension a little bit and make sure you have it set to a point where it just feels like you can move it back and forth, but it's not going to unspool. Here's your little drive wheel, and this is a flux only machine, and it's got a 030 and 035 grooves in it for different diameter wire. We're running 030, so we're going to put that on the wire. Flux machines have grooves with little tiny teeth in them to kind of grip the wire and help to feed it through. And if you're running a solid MIG wire, you want to run grooves that are actually smooth without the teeth on them. So just consider that when you're setting up your machine. So after you get the wire in there and on the right groove, you want to adjust the tensioner knob. This isn't too crucial, but something to consider. For flux wire, you definitely don't want to be pinching it down too hard. You can kind of bend and crush the wire a little bit. So what you want to do is you want to adjust the tensioner knob on the wire. So when you actually pull the trigger and use a wood piece of block right here, you don't want to be doing this on the metal and arc and, you know, without a helmet, all that stuff. So anyways, you want it to pull the trigger and extend out a few inches. And if it extends out a few inches, you want to see the metal roll and flex like this. All right, we're talking about gear a little bit. Of course, we got a little flux welder right here. Doesn't really matter as long as you got some type of MIG or flux welder to get going with. Some scraps of metal, and there'll be a little link to a video up above where I salvaged all this stuff. Because of course, if you learn how to weld, you're definitely gonna need some scraps of metal. Simple wire brush is good to have. You don't need these higher end welding clamps. They're nice, they work really well. You can get by with these guys. I use quite a few of them. They're $2 or $3 at Harbor Freight. They work pretty damn good for holding material down. Some type of needle nose pliers or some pliers so you can cut the wire off when you have too much extending out. Angle grinder. I've had this one for years. It cost me like 20 bucks, and they're pretty good. You can get this is a flat wheel for cleaning up metal. Cut off wheel, you can get wire brushes for them as well. Definitely recommend if you don't have any other way to cut metal, they cut metal really well. Safety goggles. Auto dim helmet if you can afford it. They make a world of difference. I started with a fixed shade. You can definitely start with a fixed shade helmet where it's just always dark when you have to get it kind of lined up where you want to do and shake your head down, it drops down, and you hope you're actually on the joint you're trying to weld. It's kind of a pain in the ass, but a fixed shade helmet you can work with, but these auto dims are the way to go if you can afford it. There's a wide range from 40 bucks to hundreds of dollars. So get yourself one of these. We're going to get set up Liam with the Vulcan. It's got a bigger viewing than this little tiny Miller I have. Definitely give yourself a jump on that one. Try to get an auto dim helmet. Gloves. Now you can wear those big bulky gloves like you can buy at welding stores. I buy these. These are just Husky brand. You can get them at Home Depot, most hardware stores. They're thinner leather gloves. Thinner being if you're not paying attention to what you're doing, you touch a hot piece of metal, you're going to get burned through them a lot easier. But you can actually feel what you're doing. You can feel the gun, you can feel the pieces of the metal you're working with. Keeps the sparks off your hands, and I just prefer the thinner gloves. Do what you like, use what you like, but I've found over the years this is what I like to MIG weld with. These are nice. They look stupid when you got them on, but they're leather sleeves. We'll get them on you so you can feel the bulked up leather sleeves, but they save a lot of shirts from getting melted up and burned up holes in them. And I didn't get these until a few years ago, but man, they've saved a lot of shirts and a few little burns and things like that. So you can get these at welding shops and stuff like that, probably 20 bucks. Kind of go over some basics with them about welding, and we're going to see how his first bead goes, and then kind of look it over, critique it, and see what we can do to fine tune it and go from there. Inside the welder here, we have a little chart. We got it set up for 1/8 inch. I would advise you guys, whatever welder you have, make sure that you set it up, get it in the ballpark for voltage and wire speed and all that kind of stuff. Once you get your technique down and figure it out, you adjust that stuff to your own liking. But just get it in the ballpark with the charts. Get a good ground. Always make sure you got a good ground on your workpiece. No paint, no rusty metal. And give yourself a break. Clean up, if you're using salvage metal, clean it up the best you can. You don't really want oil, rust, things like that on there. You want to have the best shot at learning how to do this. So clean metal. Stick out, wire stick out, no more than 1/2 inch. We're going to shoot for like a 1/4 inch to 3/8 stick out of the wire for flux. And another thing is, it's a little saying, if it's got slag, you drag. That means that this is a flux wire. So you're going to want to always pull it at like a 15-degree angle, not straight up and down, not too relaxed. 15 degrees, you want to pull it back always. If it's gas, you can push or you can pull. It's still a little different. Gas is a little more forgiving that way with shielding gas. We'll get into that maybe in another video. What I was telling Liam about right now, we're not going to worry too much. You can do a little pull straight back. You can do a little curly cues. I prefer doing like little mini like E's almost along the metal. But we're not going to worry about that as much as just being consistent and keeping your tip off the workpiece at a consistent height and keeping the angle right and just keeping it pulling back at a consistent speed. I usually don't weld single-handed unless I'm in a really awkward spot. I'll usually, maybe I'm more shaky, I don't know, but I'll usually brace my shoulder or elbow on something, and I'll try to hold the gun with both hands and then just try to feed at a consistent speed there, and you get 2 points of contact on it. You can hold it a lot better than just one. So I laid down one weld here to show Liam a little bit of a technique, and I'm going to hand him the MIG lead and see what he can do. Alright, here we go for Liam's first try. Make it a little steeper, Liam. Yeah, right there. Now give it a pull. Ooh. Yep, don't worry about it. Pull it on and go for it. Hold it on. Go slower. A lot slower. Good. We'll clean that off and see what he did there. Pretty damn good, Liam. Alright, so this next one I'm going to let Liam weld without coaching him to slow down on it. I think this is going to be pretty consistent with most people who are learning how to flux wire weld, or just MIG weld in general, is they travel too fast and leave kind of a spotty, splattery weld and don't really get a weld bead. So yeah, we're going to watch him at this one and see how it comes out, and just slow and steady with this flux wire. So, ready to start welding now?
Yes.
Alright.
Oh man.
What do you think?
I think I could have done better.
I think you did alright, dude. Yeah, your first one looked better. As you can see, you got really consistent. You did your little curly cues. And this one, you have a lot of lumpiness. This is alright. This is what most people deal with. That one you did was exceptionally good for your first time. So yeah, you just let you do your own thing, and it's kind of lumpy and inconsistent, but you know what? Everyone starts somewhere. You'll get better from here. Let's do a few more practice ones and we'll move on. Not as good as your first one, better than your second one, but that's not too bad. You're getting there. So we got Liam two separate pieces of 1/8 inch steel here. We left a little 1/16 inch gap down the center of them, and nice clean metal. Got our ground clamp on. We got it clamped down pretty well. All right, you ready for it, Liam?
I am.
All right, give it a try. Remember, consistent speed. Do your little squiggles and keep probably about a 1/4 inch to maybe 3/8 stick out on your wire.
Go on, move off the side there a bit.
I think that looked great, Liam. So you're very consistent. You kept your stick out consistent, and you had your arm kind of braced and using both hands on the the MIG gun there, and I think that turned out pretty good. Oh yeah, dude, that turned out pretty damn good, man. Liam, I think that's an A+ job right there on that weld. I think you did good. You listened to what I had to say. You moved slowly, made sure to have enough filler in there for the bead. I noticed you did your little squiggles along the way, and you kept a consistent stick out all the way down. I think you did great. What do you think about that?
I mean, I didn't think it was going to be that good.
It turned out pretty good, dude. I like it. This one, you actually had a little seam to put together two pieces. Did you find you could actually follow down the actual seam on there? Could you see it when you're welding?
No.
You couldn't see it? Usually I find it gives you something good as a little guideline, but anyways, that turned out really nice.
I just saw the line and went straight.
Just tried to follow it in memory. Were you able to look in and see the... When I weld, I like to look in, actually when you have a good helmet, you can actually see what you're doing. I like to see the wire going in. I like to look at the puddle. You've been paying attention to the puddle and the buildup and everything like that?
I can see that.
Yeah, that's good. You know, slag, you got this coating that floats up on the surface, so it makes the bead look taller than it really is, because you got to chip that off. But when we go weld with MIG, you'll understand, like, what you see is what you get, and it's much cleaner. You don't get all those little BBs, the spatter on there and the smoke and stuff. And MIG is a lot cleaner, but that's for another video. We got some 1/8" tubing. We're gonna practice. You're gonna tack weld those together, because this is pretty common if you have salvage metal. This is 1/8" by 1.5" tubing. Sometimes you're gonna have to join that stuff together, so we'll get welding that next. And we got some tubing that's thin wall, 1/16". This is a little more common to burn through, so we'll see how you do with that.
Okay.
All right, you guys, you probably heard me talk with Liam about doing little squigglies down the joint. That is definitely not a welding technical term. I just want to clarify something real quick. So this would be like a stringer joint where you just run your weld down stringer bead and you just run your weld straight down it. This would be kind of like a weave where you go back and forth a little bit in the joint. And this one is something that I do quite often. It's like little mini E's, like cursive E's, but backwards all the way down. But we're not too worried about that in this video showing Liam how to practice welding. Mainly want to make sure he has a stick out right, consistent off the workpiece, and consistent feed speed, so he's not going too fast. All right, Liam, so what we're gonna do is you're gonna want to come in here. We got our workpiece clamped down pretty well. We got the ground on here. You're gonna want to come in and you're gonna want to tack weld the corner. We're gonna unclamp it, flip it over, and weld the opposite corner on the other side. Because when you weld, if you just started on here and you're going to form these two pieces together, say they're like 4 feet on each side, and you started welding down one side consistently without tack welding it, you will actually have that bar will bend and bow, and you won't have a straight bar. So heat, it's crazy how much bowing in metal does when you start heating it. So that's why you want to tack weld at least 2 of the corners, opposite corners, and then go from there. Probably about a second and a half, just so you get a nice little bead on each corner there. Looks good. That was great. That was about perfect. Alright, we'll flip this thing over and tack weld the other side. Maybe you could travel a little faster on the next one. The weld got pretty wide there and pretty hot. Sometimes you get it overheated, it makes the flux doesn't want to come off as much. And see it pitted at the end. We can probably even turn voltage down just a hair, or just travel a little faster on the next one. But that's pretty good, Liam. So here's his first weld, and I think he can travel down the next one a little bit quicker. Started getting pretty hot and wide, and it started blowing the metal out the very end here. Not a big thing, but this is not something to worry about when you're first starting out learning. But this little crater here can be a weaker section of the weld, and which you can come back through later and fill that in. Or if you're welding a little bit quicker along there, it won't be such a crater at the very end. But something to consider later on, not something to worry about just learning and starting out your technique, but something to consider as you get your technique down and figured out there. Nice. You traveled a little quicker on that one, didn't you?
Yes.
Oh yeah, that one turned out better. Because you had a lot of... Oh yeah, that one, see how nice that slag came off there too? It wasn't baked into it, it just kind of popped off in one big piece. So that one turned out a lot better, Liam. You traveled a lot quicker, and definitely that slag chipped off of there in one big piece. Looks pretty good. I think you got a lot less crater on that one. Well, those are turning out really good. You're getting your travel technique, the proper speed. You're getting your stick out figured out there. And yeah, you're starting to know how to work that pretty well. Great job, Liam. I think that one turned out the best. Really good. All right, now we're gonna dial this thing back for 16th inch, and it's a little more tricky on thinner metal. It has a more of a tendency to blow through and burn through. What do you think? You up for 16th inch metal?
Oh yeah.
All right. He's got some confidence.
It's a challenge.
Yeah. All right, we'll dial this thing in. We tried to fit this, the two pieces as close as we could together. We cleaned off all the old mill slag and oil on it. And we're going to see if Liam can travel quick enough down this thing and get a nice bead, but not blow a hole in the metal. All right. Up for the challenge?
Challenge.
Okay, let's go.
Oh.
Hear that sound? Burn through. That's okay. You're traveling a little too slow there. That's fine. One thing I should have told you was on this really thin stuff, you can just do it as a straight stringer. You don't have to do the little C's or V's. It's okay. It's a learning curve. We gotta make it look a little harder like it really is because you're taking to this too damn quick. Okay, so we're gonna flip this over the other side, and there is a way you can fill in that, and I'll show you that real quick.
Here.
Okay, what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna want to let it cool off like you did. You're gonna want to come in here and fill in the edge of the hole a little bit, like a little tack weld, and then stop, let it cool. Come over the other side, fill a little bit, let it cool, and then fill down the center. Okay? So kind of start, stop, start, stop. So let's see if you can fill that hole in. Okay, go again. Okay, and go again. Keep going. Okay, Leo. So what you're going to want to do is just a straight stringer on this one. You're just going to want to just travel down at a bit faster speed than you have been doing on the 1/8 inch. You want to just let off once you get just barely over the corner there. And just a straight stringer will keep you from burning through and putting too much heat into that part. Very good. I think when you let off there, you might have burned a little hole in the very edge, but I think you did pretty good there. Dude, you got that one quick. I think you did that one pretty well. I think that's your best one yet. That one turned out pretty good, Liam. Alright, your fourth side. Oh yeah, you're getting your quick speed travel figured out. So if you guys are welding a thicker metal, like say 1/4 inch, stuff like that, you want to chamfer your welds, just cut them as kind of a V shape where your two pieces butt together so you can get that bead deep down into there and fill that whole area. You'll have definitely a deeper weld and just a stronger joint right there. So something to consider. And another thing is if you're starting and then stopping, sometimes you want to come back through and chip a little of that slag at that stop point. And if you're going to restart the weld, especially if you're going to start the weld on something, say like I built a hydraulic tank years ago for a log splitter, and you want it to be oil tight so oil's not seeping through. You want to say this is your stop weld and you got a seam right here you got to fill. You want to start in front of it, chip the slag off that last joint, start here, come back just, you know, a quarter of an inch or so in front of the last weld, come back, fill it, and then start moving ahead. So what you get is you don't get a cold joint right there. You don't want to have a seam or something. You don't want to start and lay another weld right here when it's cold. You want to start in front of it, get the metal hot, move back, and then start filling over that again. Something to consider. These are all techniques that you can apply later on. They're just things to get you thinking about now as you're learning, and just kind of try to implement them here and there, and you'll just start making consistent habits when you're welding. So a few last things to mention. Like I said before, if you're welding and you end up stopping a weld, sometimes you'll have a crater in there. Sometimes you can just pause at the last little bit for a moment and just fill that last little bit and leave less of a crater at the end of your weld. Another technique to work on later, not something to worry about right off the bat, but make it a consistent habit to do. Make stronger welds. And like I said earlier, sometimes we'll get buildup on the tip, and sometimes you'll be welding, you'll see that buildup come right down the wire and get in the weld. That will cause contamination. Little like pockets and pinholes, that's porosity. You don't want to really have that in it as much as you possibly can avoid it. It's to the best. It just makes the weld a little more weak, things like that. And another thing to consider, if you've been welding for a while with the same tip, especially with flux, because flux is pretty dirty. MIG is a lot cleaner. You don't have to change out tips as often, but you want to change these little consumable tips up in the front every so often. You know, maybe every time you put a new roll on your welder, like that's I think a 1 pound roll or 2 pound roll. You want to switch those out maybe every time. They're not very expensive, and it'll just make sure you get a good contacting tip on there. Sometimes you'll be welding along and like it just won't be working very good. Check your ground. Make sure you got good ground on your workpiece, and if it's still kind of welding funky, think about last time you changed out your contactor tip. And when you go to change it out, make a note of what size it is and make sure you got the right contactor tip to the right wire size, because you definitely don't want to be running 030 wire and 035 contactor tips. So a few little things to pay attention to and keep in mind. And if you guys are interested, there's a lot of other welder reviews I've done. I've done one on the Omni Pro 220 and on the Titanium 200. Those are great welders. I've been really happy. Even covered one on this welder that's behind Liam here. This is the Vulcan Pro TIG 200. That's a TIG machine. But anyways, if you guys are interested into welders, I'll put a few links at the end of this videos for a playlist and covering some other affordable but very good welders. So if you guys are interested, check out those videos. And until next time. All right, you guys, take care. Goodbye.